the United States Senate is trying to find money for Ukraine. And to do so, Emily, they're turning to immigration policy. Tell us what's going on with these negotiations.
Yeah, so again, obviously, when we were covering what happened with Kevin McCarthy and ended in the speakership of Mike Johnson, again, he continues. We will bring you updates week by week on whether Mike Johnson continues to be a real person. He is, in fact, a real person. We can confirm that as of this week. We'll bring you an update next week if that changes. But Mike Johnson is now in the situation of basically negotiating against a government shutdown. He wants to do sort of a tiered omnibus system, what they call it ladder, right? Which is new. You've never seen that in all your time covering Congress, I imagine. Yeah, it's sort of a legislative parliamentary innovation. But one of the ways that Republicans are trying to force Democrats to the table is making them pass what was H.R. 2 in the House, a very tough immigration bill that I think actually probably would have been a consensus left-right type of legislation 20 years ago, but no longer is, because we have massive waves of migrants like we've never seen before coming up through Central America and into Mexico. And so it's now a political football in a way it wouldn't have been before. It reforms the asylum system. There may be a bargaining chip, and I say that in a way that it's a tragedy that I'm saying it, but there may be a bargaining chip with DACA immigrants, which is constantly—
Like DACA would get a pathway to citizenship, but nobody else would?
Right, but will Republicans let a pathway to citizenship for the DACA kids, who are not really kids anymore, become
30s and 40s now?
Yes. So all that is to say, Republicans think rightfully it's pathetic that Democrats support the Biden administration's immigration policy. And a lot of this does need to go through Congress because the Biden administration is just acting with executive authority that can be reformed via Congress. And so they're saying, this is our demand. This is our bargaining chip. This is our condition for passing your omnibus budget deal to avoid a government shutdown. Mike Johnson wants to push it into January. There's not a lot of time to figure this out, basically.
Right, and so Chris Murphy is the Democrat leading the negotiations on the Senate side. Murphy, though, his priority is Ukraine funding.
Right. And
so you're hearing a lot of anger from folks, like particularly Pablo Manriquez has been reporting this on Capitol Hill, saying that the Hispanic senators are not happy having Chris Murphy kind of giving away the farm on immigration in order to get Ukraine money. At the same time, though, you've got then the Republicans on the right in the House thinking that there's not enough in the Senate immigration provision.
Right.
So where is this going to head?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big remaining questions. And actually, we can put the next element up on the screen here. This is the Associated Press's coverage. Republicans want to pair security with aid, border security with aid for Ukraine. Here's why that makes the deal so tough. It's about also immigration enforcement, so funding. And this is where Biden has definitely come to the table. And this is what's really upsetting some of the Republicans in the kind of Freedom Caucus circles and conservative movement circles. Biden is saying basically that I'm going to come to the table on funding, CBP. I'm going to come to the table. I'm going to fund Border Patrol. I'm going to fund all of these security measures for—
Buy more four-wheelers.
Right, for the border. Yeah, exactly. And so that gives Biden a huge rhetorical win. He can say that he struck a deal with Republicans because you need a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate for this to pass. Obviously, Republicans control the House. So obviously, Democrats have a huge contingency in the House, but you would need a lot of Republicans. It would have to be a bipartisan deal in the House as well. So Biden can strike a deal with Republicans that lets him say he supported a tougher border policy. And all of that comes without reforming asylum law, which, if you follow the immigration issue closely, whether you're on the left or on the right, without changes to our asylum law, there will continue to be a humanitarian crisis at the border. That is the bottom line. That's game over. There's no period. There's no other question that you can even bring up in that space. So the sort of Freedom Caucus people that pushed out Kevin McCarthy and are sort of, begrudgingly swallowing the Mike Johnson pill are furious because it gives Biden a rhetorical win on border security without actually doing a damn thing for the border. Now, let's put this quote up on the screen. This is exclusive to us here at Counterpoints. Breaking points, this is from a senior Senate staffer who told us last night—
Republican side, right?
Republican Senate staffer. It's not about the border. It's about a fig leaf for funding Ukraine. And that's how Mitch McConnell, I kind of joked with the source. I was like, I'm just going to attribute this to Mitch McConnell because that's Mitch McConnell is probably saying that in private.
Right.
Like, this is our fig leaf for funding Ukraine. It's transparently obvious. That's what they're doing.
Right. They want money for Ukraine. They have to figure out a way that they can get Republicans to feel good about voting for it. And so go after immigrants a little tiny bit.
Right. And this is, again, from the AP piece. They were saying Biden's emergency request to Congress included aid for Ukraine, Israel, and other U.S. allies, along with $14 billion to bolster the immigration system and border security. So, again, it's about the Israel emergency request, too. And that was a huge sort of dust-up with J.D. Vance on the Senate side, who was specifically saying they're trying to tie Ukraine to Israel because they know that there's support for Israel funding, and that support for more and more money to Ukraine is really becoming difficult for them to sell back home.
Right. So they're just trying to find things that you can rope to Ukraine funding and kind of drag it through Congress.
Right.
Already you've got Heritage Action. We can put up this third element here. You've got Heritage Action, right-wing organization saying H.R. 2 is the only solution to securing the border. It's the kind of a preemptive shot at these negotiations, and they're warning that what the Senate Republicans are coming up with is too moderate and should not be kind of enough of a carrot to drag Ukraine funding across the finish line.
Yeah, and I want to read this article from The Hill, just as of yesterday. They say no government funding bills are scheduled to hit the House floor this week, and their headline is actually GOP faces ominous signs in effort to avoid January shutdown. Basically, so this is the emergency funding request, but it's all tied together because these are all different chips. And they're all different pieces of the puzzle to get to a funded government. Because if Mike Johnson is gone in the middle of this negotiation, which is totally possible because there's still one person motion to vacate, then you go into a shutdown. And I don't think Democrats, I mean, the incentive for Democrats is shutdowns are a gift to them politically. So they don't have a ton of incentive. It doesn't look great for Biden. You know, they obviously want to avoid that, but Republicans always get blamed for shutdown, sometimes reasonably so, because Republicans say, please blame us for the shutdown. Like, look at us, we shut down the government. So the incentives to actually make a deal on this, both politically and on the policy front, are basically zero.
Right. And this is all happening as we've gotten new revelations over the last few days that the negotiations that were taking place in Turkey between Ukraine and Russia in March of 22 were actually as close to reaching a peace deal as some people suspected at the time, later torpedoed basically, by the U.S. and by the U.K. That famous Boris Johnson visit to Kyiv, in which he pushed Zelensky to not sign any truce agreement. The question of whether Russia was serious about it and would have been willing to actually reach a truce at that point remains open. But what we're hearing from a key leader in the Ukrainian negotiations is that it was extremely close at the time. That Russia at the moment was looking for a way out. Now here we are, almost 2 years later, with the U.S. trying to figure out how to kind of jam up Congress to push through tens of billions of more for a war that has seen so many people killed on each side.
And yeah, I mean, we can just kind of end with this quote from Mario Diaz-Balart. So The Hill writes, as the funding fight drags on, senior appropriators worry that the House GOP will be on weak footing in interchamber negotiations if the conference continues to struggle with clearing its conservative spending bills. Diaz-Balart says, my goal is to move the most conservative bills we can out of the House to put us in the best possible negotiation position with the Senate. But if we can't pass, we don't get the Republican votes to do conservative bills. H.R. 2 was a bill that the House Republicans passed earlier. That's one of those bills that kind of fits into that strategy. So this is all connected, and it's all a disaster. Right. That's basically all you need to know. Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.